Hey, long time no see. I am coming to you from under a shelf today, and unfortunately, I am a bit stuffed up, but it's been like that for a few weeks now, so I just figured it's time to go anyway. So, question time. In a world where we're moving towards 24/7 availability of everything imaginable, is your life better without those limits, or are limits actually what makes your life interesting, beautiful, and meaningful? I was walking with my mom when I was home with her the previous year, and we were talking about how she grew up in the 1940s in a small and poor rural town in Maine, part of the US. We were talking about all the different food they grew on their property over the years, and also about how much potatoes and deer meat, venison, she remembers them eating. That was the memory that stuck out for my mom. But her parents also made part of their living growing strawberries, and she told me that during the strawberry season, all the relatives would come by because they wanted to have some strawberry shortcake, a once a year event. I can only imagine how special it was during those harvests to have that yearly break from the everyday meal. To not only appreciate the rare nature of what you're eating, but that it came from your own backyard. When I was growing up and we spent our summers in Maine, I remember how excited I was when they finally brought in the fresh corn on the cob from the backyard. These are experiences that are fleetingly rare. Of course, we still have a few seasonal items in the grocery store, and the abundance and quality of fruits and vegetables is much higher during local harvest seasons. But there's rarely a time you can't go get and have something you might get a craving for. There are many stories like this around the world if you'd ask an older generation. Even the world I grew up in during the 80s and 90s was hardly as limitless as today. The theory seems to be make everything available all the time and we'll be a happier society. Or at least that's the outcome of markets responding to and providing for human desires. But it's not the fulfillment of desires that necessarily makes us happy. Limits bring value to things by forcing us to appreciate their temporary nature, which puts us into a different and possibly more heightened perspective. Our emotions more strongly encode such an event, and it becomes a strong memory and thus one that has meaning for you as an individual. Limits, in effect, can create meaning by that very nature, and limits, when applied consciously to our lives, help create the rules of a game that gives us purpose by keeping things we don't value but are otherwise omnipresent out of our lives and bringing things we do value but that are crowded out by distractions into sharper focus. Limits create a challenge where there otherwise wasn't one, and challenges keep us engaged and critically thinking. You might think this is creating more difficulty in your life, but I think you'll find that's not actually true. Some things might become more difficult to accomplish at first, but also more fun because you're playing a game that you like, because it's consciously built on things that bring you value. And when you see value in the things that you're doing, then your perspective shifts and you stop seeing them as difficult. Many things will also become simpler because you're no longer distracting yourself with the problems of distractions that don't actually bring you value. The key is to set the right kind of limits. If you've watched enough of my other videos, you'll know my view on energy transactions being the most primary and raw measurement of value that exists. That's not to say the only things of value, just the principles upon which all else in the universe are based. It's where I believe you absolutely must base your logic and action if you want to make your life's mission to make the world a better place. If you look at our personal lives, then you see that using external energy, that is, energy not produced by our own bodies and biomechanical labor, is viewed as a nearly limitless entity. It's of course priced and limited on our income and wealth, but those limits are magnitudes above our own individual capabilities to generate energy. That's certainly not a bad possibility to leverage for our high value endeavors, but the truth is, there's no such thing as free energy, and it's not limitless nor as cheaply valued as we make it in our economies. Thus, one of the limits I've set in my life is on the amount of energy I use. Energy use can be seen across a scale of wastefulness versus usefulness, where at one end you have energy you're consuming but getting zero value out of, maybe leaving the lights on somewhere you aren't, to energy we consume for things we're doing but that don't actually bring us any value and waste our time as well as energy, which possibly could be even before the other one, to things that are tied to our values but are done energetically inefficiently. The things that most strongly come to mind here for me is how often we use cars that weigh one or almost two orders of magnitude more than we do to pick up something that weighs an order or magnitude or two less than us, while we, for example, have a need for exercise in our lives. And finally, the opposite end from pure wastefulness. And that's being things that bring us value and that we do energetically efficiently. Ideally, most of the things that you choose to do and then do with your own energy, using a bike or walking to make the previous pickup, for example. Now, this is across a scale of wastefulness, not a scale of impact. For that, you need a little tool called math, and I have or will talk about the surprising nature of that math in more in other videos. So, in this game of energy conservation, you might devise an unbiased way, or as unbiased as possible, to monitor what you use and be dedicated to constantly improving that monitoring. You would use that monitoring to drive down your energy usage and help you observe your progress. And you would need to stay committed to it for as much time as is necessary, something that's much easier when you're convinced of its value. When I play this game, every time I find a way to remove waste in my personal energy usage, I get real meaning out of it, and my purpose in playing the game is rewarded. The game is directly tied to my life mission to make the world a better place, something I believe is only possible by first removing as many of the behaviors I can that make the world a worse place faster than I could ever hope to improve it. I've thought fairly deeply about my values, and I see real value in playing my individually chosen and designed game built on limits. I enjoy playing and always want to try to play it better. It interests me and excites me to find new solutions where someone else might not even see a problem. But those same people see problems somewhere, and the question is whether they are problems of their own choosing, mapped to the values, or not. That makes all the difference in the perspectives we have on our problems. There are so many different areas where I think limits can be used to design and play more interesting games in your life that give you more purpose, meaning, and a sense of fulfillment and happiness. The way and what we eat, based on what I mentioned earlier, for example, our relationships with other people, whether romantic or platonic. Imagine you no longer allowed yourself to choose being annoyed with someone when they said something you didn't agree with, or to simplify your observations of someone's behavior from one encounter into a short psychological diagnosis instead of just keeping yourself from having no opinion at all. Or maybe the way we are productive in life. What if you no longer allowed yourself to spend your two best mental energy hours on anything but the most valuable thing you want to work towards, and you committed to that every single day? Not easy things to do, but when were the easy things ever the most valuable? Limits are incredibly powerful design devices. As Dieter Rams is attributed to, weniger aber besser. Sorry about my bad German, but it translates to less but better. Don't play games designed for shitty or non specific outcomes. Start designing your own game, and it might just end up being the greatest purpose and meaning of your life. Start simple and build from what works, but work towards something of real value to you, and dare to be more specific in what's meaningful to you than simply making a lot of money. Have a plan for how what you accomplish can benefit everyone around you. Play the game with the intensity of your love for it, and the story of your journey will give back to you 100 times, regardless of how close you ever get to your original or changing view of success. That's the best I've got for you today on improving the feel of your life, but I'll be back with some new thoughts soon, and I hope you will do the same. Take care.